Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on UNARIUN Revelations, I'm with UNARIUN's Lani Calvert and Tracey Kennedy, and we're going to explore how do you keep your peace of mind in crazy times. And we're certainly living in very fast-paced and seemingly crazy times. Greetings, ladies. How are you?
Hello,
Great.
Chris. Great.
Thank you for
Lani,
having us.
it's wonderful having you guys here. I always enjoy our conversations. Lani, how would you define peace of mind?
Well, I'm going to start with what it's not because there's a lot of interesting ideas out there. It's not a utopia. So, we all need problems. We have them handed to us so that we can learn, we can grow. If we didn't, we would atrophy both in mind and body. So they challenge us to become stronger, to become better, more intelligent, grateful, selfless, etc. So you don't want a world where there's no challenges at all and everything's handed to you. But peace of mind to me is knowing that, even though I can't change anybody else, um, I can change myself. And when I change myself, everything and everyone around me changes. And with Unarius, I know that I have the knowledge and the tools to resolve any problem. And with the attainment of wisdom and freedom through self-knowledge, self-mastery, etc., you have a more direct rapport with infinite creative intelligence, which is, what some people might call God, if you will, and accepting your place in the scale of human evolution. So, then you find a peace within yourself and your neighbors.
Thank you. I found that to be true as well, as my consciousness remains either positive or negative or neutral. My world changes to reflect what's going on inside my mind. And in my conversations with people too, I'm continuously made aware of how they choose to view the world and the stories they wish to tell about it determine what their experience is, and that people can experience the exact same thing, but because they look at it in different ways, they're going to have a totally different experience. Tracey, how about you? How would you define peace of mind? Tracey? Can you hear me, Tracey?
Sorry, my dog is barking in the background.
Oh, okay.
Um, he's not experiencing peace of mind right now. He's on high alert because something's out there. Lani gave a great answer, and peace of mind, obviously, I think is different for everyone. But I think for myself personally, when I experience peace of mind, it's a lack of unrest, a lack of anxiety, a lack of um, uncertainty with what's happening, and a sense of calmness and an attunement with my higher self. And I feel that when, or I know that it's not a conscious mind thing, but it's very, when I feel calm and I feel just a sense of love and an attunement with the infinite creative intelligence. And when I'm experiencing that, it's not like, oh, I'm in tune with infinite creative intelligence. It's, oh, I just feel good and feel positive and feel, even in the midst of certain crises I may be going through. And most of my crises tend to happen at my business, at work. It's very, it can be very stressful. It's very fast paced. And we have an art business that we own. We have 9 employees, including myself and my husband, Kevin, who own the business. And there's a lot, it's a creative business, and there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of things that can go wrong. And I do best at handling crisis when I experience peace of mind. And when I know no matter what situation is thrown at us, or something doesn't go right, or we can't get the supply that we need for a job, or a customer's upset, or we're afraid we're not going to meet a deadline. We have a lot of customers that have deadlines. I just know it's going to work out okay. And I don't need to get upset about it. Everything always works out okay. And the more I have that confidence, that inner confidence that things will be okay no matter what, and what I have to learn from it, I experience peace of mind, and I don't get upset. I very rarely get angry when things go wrong. I get frustrated, but I am able to experience a peace of mind much more frequently than prior to studying Unarius and understanding how to apply the principles that whatever happens out there, I can't control, but I can control what happens in my consciousness and, in my mind. I'm pointing to my brain, but in my consciousness, I can control that by maintaining a steady state of calmness. So it's not always attainable, but it's much more attainable as I've gotten older and more experienced with how how the mind functions and how the principles work and applying them to myself.
And UNARIUS has a vast toolkit of techniques and perspectives that are very helpful in all of life's circumstances. Both of you brought up a higher self or a higher perspective. How would you define that? Because many of the people in our audience might not be aware of their spiritual parts.
Well, we all have what we term a higher self, as part of our psychic anatomy. We have a physical anatomy, but we also have a psychic anatomy. And so we are living in a dimension, Earth is a physical dimension, material dimension. That's a certain spectrum of frequencies, like you have electromagnetic spectrum goes from here to here, that kind of thing. So above that spectrum, above the frequency of thought, we as UNARIUS students are trying to achieve that attunement, like you would tune to a radio or a specific television station, attunement to higher frequencies of interdimensional worlds. So that's what, as far as, higher, what was the word that you said? Higher what?
The higher self.
Yeah, the higher self. So, for example, when we read UNARIUS texts, because they're not just words on a page, they have been created by what we call the brothers, or the teachers, the masters, that are not incarnated on Earth anymore, but have Earth's benefit as part of what they do. And so making an attunement to that station, if you will, if you use the analogy of a radio, making an attunement to that station, it puts your mind on a higher frequency, and then you are more in tune with your higher self, because it's a higher frequency as well, rather than like your subconscious, or attunement to your past lives, negative past lives, etc. So, we want to be in tune with that higher self, those higher frequencies, because that's where you're receptive to your infinite self, so to speak, your God self, your Christ self, where you can get answers to problems and inspiration and all those things. You don't get it when you're stuck in, the emotions of, all the different emotions that people are experiencing today. You're not getting new input. Most of the time, if you're in tune with the television, the media, the different things that are reporting on, how awful, how many people have died, how many people were wounded, you're in a lower state of consciousness. So the higher state of consciousness is to, the inner planes, to the beings that we've learned about on the inner planes, to your own problems that you have resolved in a constructive way become a part of your higher self.
Thank you very much, Tracey. Same question.
Well, it's we all have a higher self, and I think that's something that's sorely lacking in our education system and philosophies. And I know many religions will talk about it, but it's important that we recognize that we all are very psychic. We're all clairvoyant. We all have a higher self, and we have a lower self. And most of the time, most of us go around with using our conscious mind and reacting to the stimuli that uh, affects us in our daily life. And we're in tune with our lower self, which is not the better part of ourselves. It's something that's very familiar to us. It's something we regenerated lifetime after lifetime, because we know that in our energy body, we have lived many, many lifetimes, and we are who and what we are as a result of what we've done in our past lives. So with this awareness that we have a higher self and that we can build our higher selves and experience peace of mind, experience, as Lani talked about, more creativity, inspiration, get answers, insights to situations, and really learn how to be of service to humanity, to other people. And this is what these space beings, who are advanced people who have gone through many of the same situations, problems, scenarios, lessons that we have, either are living in a physical body on a more advanced plane or in a non-atomic body, and are being of service and are constantly projecting healing rays and loving rays to all of us. That when we're open, and many people have heard of this, that when you're born, all of us have, guardian angels that are looking over us. Well, it's true. That is really what's happening. And the more that we can open up our consciousness and be aware of, and not ask or demand that, oh, I need this help or help me, but just be aware and be receptive. That's when we're starting to open up and be aware of that higher self and develop a higher self and function more from our higher self versus from the reactionary, mundane, emotional, negative emotion state of mind that we tend to go around with all the time, and brought us, those of us who, and it's not exclusive. We all have this ability to be aware that we have a higher self and to want to grow and expand as a spiritual being, because we are all spirit beings.
But something that Tracy mentioned that earlier, that we're not taught these things. And I was thinking of when she mentioned a child, that many children come in and they start talking about these invisible beings that they can see, or, experiences they've had in another lifetime or here or in heaven, quote unquote, or whatever, and they're not encouraged. They're told by their parents or other people, that's just your imagination, that kind of thing. So when people encourage it, especially with parents, if they encourage their children, then we will develop that higher self more, and we'll have the psychic abilities. We'll communicate, instead of with the flapping tongue. We'll communicate.
Yeah, that's very true. I know in my own personal experience, it was encouraged when I was very small, but it wasn't encouraged when I grew older and these experiences continued. And I learned very quickly not to share my direct experience with anybody. So it seemed a lot of times like I was living in a totally different world that I couldn't talk about. And it was like being bereft of like sight or hearing or one of your senses because you couldn't talk about it. But so I'm glad that organizations such as UNARIUS exist, because they provide this information to people who wouldn't normally get it except through entertainment, which is very tinged with negativity. One of the things that we all have to contend with is the news or the news media. And one of the things I noticed about the news, especially now, the way the world has become, is that it increases polarization, and it also increases a sense of outrage and victimization. And I like hearing perspectives that are very different than the ones that I hold, um, because when people stand in different places, they see different things. So I try to get a better viewpoint of what people are seeing. And I noticed that each of these polarizations accuses the other perspectives of being evil, and they're accusing each other of the same things. So I no longer believe any particular perspective. I try to get as much information and know that I can't really interpret which of this information is correct or to what degree. But this one, I'm at least aware of what the world around me is thinking and saying and reacting to. For people who are stuck there, who don't know about a higher self or other higher planes or even other planes of being, how would you advise them to, again, find peace of mind when, like Chicken Little, they're waiting for the sky to fall, because of what the news is saying?
Well, one suggestion is there is a Good News Network online, and you can listen to that as a break from, it's like the news. It's like all you're hearing is the bad stuff, right? How they're going to war and how many people were killed and so forth. So that's a suggestion. GNN, Good News Network, is to get good stories. But anyway, it's an evolution to be able to understand, how these things work. But one thing is to understand that everybody is going through and is where they should be to experience what they need to learn to grow, and that helps us. That doesn't really help the other person if they don't believe in that. But with past lives, you have lessons, like you might say in this uh, environment, I feel powerless. I feel hopeless to change these things, but I'm so angry, blah, 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 blah. Well, there are no victims, and the energy that we put out comes back to us. Now, whether that's from this lifetime, prior to the present, or whether it's in a past lifetime. And that's what's hard for people to accept or understand if they don't believe in past lives. But that's why UNARIUN is an energy science, so that you can understand that energy is stays the same until it's changed, right? You can't kill it. Death doesn't kill it, right? So if I'm experiencing, for example, these feelings of powerlessness, let's say, well, then I have used power in a negative way in the past or in a past life, and that energy is just coming back to me. Whatever you put out comes back to you. So, I can't blame anybody. I'm on the receiving end so that I can learn the lesson. That's all we're here to do, is learn lessons. So if you can see a bigger perspective of that this is just like one tiny little step in the long chain of evolution, and hopefully progressive evolution. So it's, it kind of puts our little problems into perspective. But again, you have to be open to the continuity of life, the continuity of energy, and past lives, reincarnation, all of that kind of thing. But I mean, that knowing that you can't change anybody, I think everybody knows that. You've tried to change a spouse or, a friend or something, and it just doesn't, even if they do it for a little while to please you, it doesn't last. So the only person you can change is yourself. But I mean, that's the good news, because again, when I change, everything around me changes, the people, the situations, etc. And that's been proven too, like with what comes to mind is, I can't remember his name, Tracey, I know in the concentration camps,
Oh, Nietzsche or Viktor Frankl.
Yeah,
They're both.
Viktor Frankl.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you get to decide how you are going to respond to all these problems around you. And you can choose to be, the slave or the victim or the master. If you master those problems, that takes you forward in your evolution versus feeling, helpless.
Thank you. Tracy, anything you want to add to that or expand on
Sure.
what Lani was saying?
Well, in my several decades lifetime experience, I would have to say this has been the most challenging time where we are in our civilization, because it does feel very despairing at times when I see what's happening in the world, thinking we were making progress. And um, I have had a lot of reactions, but I also am very aware that this is part of what needs to happen on our planet. We need to see and expose, or this is what's happening. We're exposing a lot of the negativity for people to begin to wake up to their higher self and say, I don't want to experience this anymore. I don't want to be part of this. And like Lani was talking about, you work with your consciousness, you learn to rise above it, to be objective with it, and also to take positive action in whatever way you can by being of service, giving of self, doing constructive, creative projects. And another easy thing is turn off the news. I mean, there's just so much bad news out there, and there's a lot of good news. And Lani talked about the Good News Network. There's email subscriptions I subscribe to that have good stories, and I think it's a wonderful counterbalance to all the negative news that has always been traditionally what's part of media blasting us. But we all have choices, and I talked about past lives, and one of the things that UNARIUS has throughout many of its texts are information about different civilizations where they reached a pinnacle part and they started to degenerate and started to have polarization of factions, of misuse of energy, of warring. And this has happened not only on our planet in different civilizations, but also on other planets throughout the Milky Way galaxy. And we are aware of the Interplanetary Confederation, which is made up of 33 planets. And one planet in particular, Yesu, was when Uriel, our spiritual teacher, contacted them psychically they were on the verge of a massive world war with all different countries and areas ready to, full on have, basically kill each other. And she was able to contact them and awaken them to their higher self and the negativity of what they were doing. And they turned it around very, very fast. And we have the same ability to do on our planet to, all this warring and factions that's coming out now, and it's waking people up. We have people, throughout our country that are protesting a lot of what's going on, and peaceful protests, and just saying, hey, this isn't, what we want in our country. This isn't what we want in our world. So it is challenging, but it's also an opportunity for all of us as individuals to raise our consciousness, to rise above it and recognize, oh, if you understand past lives, oh, this is just the same energy. And the more reactions we have to it, the more that's an indicator of how we were involved in past lives in being instigators and being part of wars and being part of getting people to, fight against one another. And that it's an opportunity for us to look at these situations and take personal responsibility and say, oh, what I see in them and why I don't particularly care for this president is he's a, leader that I've encouraged, I've supported in the past, that type of person. And I may have even been in a leadership position where I was that type of person. And that's why it grates on me and why it bothers me so much. And look for the positive of what that person is doing or attempting to do, or know that everything changes, cycles change, and that we are going to have a positive future on planet Earth. However, if we don't recognize that there's a lot of things that need to be changed, starting with us, we just regenerate that same negative energy.
And sometimes too, we get stuck in a rut. We're happy in our own little, don't stretch the envelope kind of thing. And it takes something to wake everybody up and say, I have to do something. I can't just let this, go, whatever it is. Oh, and there's something else. Can't remember. Oh, there's a reason why we were attracted to this planet, this country, our family, our job, whatever it is, whatever that's surrounding us. We attracted it to ourselves to have that opportunity to learn from it, to grow, to change, to make progress in our progressive evolution, a step forward.
Yeah, I've found that studying the tales preserved by the UNARIUN revelations about past life cycles and life on other planets and so forth has been very helpful in that I try to look at events that are transpiring that are in my awareness as I'm looking in a mirror and I'm looking at hidden parts of myself, and I try to weigh everything from that particular perspective, and I find it very helpful because I'm finding that sometimes things that are going on, some of the attitudes that are making these things go on become very apparent, and it might be something that I partially believed inside myself. So this allows me to look at it, how ugly this thing is in actuality to believe, or if you take it far enough. And it's allowed me to let go of a lot of those beliefs. And the life cycles experience, like the Orion cycle, I've identified with that a great deal. And I remember bits and pieces of my Orion experiences. And again, it's been very helpful to read about them and then see what parts of me are still stuck there, or still acting things out from there, or reacting to things that happen there. So that's a very valuable thing. Have you found that certain life cycles are applicable to your lives in this particular incarnation?
Well, lots. I mean, because we've had thousands of lifetimes, so different cycles come in at different periods of time over the time that we've been students. We'll be in tune with different cycles. And then the more you know about that, which is why another reason the UNARIUS library is so valuable, because nobody else has this information of, what were they actually doing in Lemuria and Atlantis and, Orion and these different civilizations, or even more current ones, with Greece and Egypt, etc. What were they doing, and what reactions do I have? How did I take part? And it's part of your history. And the thing is, now you wouldn't have the reactions that you do to whatever you do in the chaos around here, if you hadn't been somehow, as Tracey mentioned, somehow been a part of it. So we're gonna keep being attracted back here as long as we don't take responsibility and learn the lesson and move on. I mean, this is a schoolroom. So if you don't want to keep finding yourselves in the future in similar situations, then you have to identify, you have to analyze, why am I reacting to it, and what do I need to overcome so I don't react to it anymore. And it's like you're not responsible for anybody else's project. As I said, you can't change anybody. You're not responsible for their evolution. We need to see each other as brothers and sisters, and all quote unquote children of the infinite. But as I said, you can't change people. So what we're here to do is really be honest, in our self-analysis of what we think, what we do, why we have the reaction. And then once you identify it, then it's easier to change it, to overcome it, to move forward. And again, if you don't want to keep experiencing it, that's what you have to do.
So I have a couple comments to add to this. First of all, I wanted to say, Hercules, you're mentioning you feel like you're looking in a mirror, which is a wonderful analogy, and it's a very important principle that UNARIUS teaches. And you can't go to UNARIUS text and look at an index and say, oh, where's the mirror principle? But it's a very valid principle. And the way it works scientifically is we all have this energy body, a psychic anatomy. And when we see something react to something, it's ringing in harmonically, something within our energy body that's a part of us. And that's what the mirror principle is whatever you see outside of you that you don't like or you have a rapport with, it's resonating within your energy body. So, and it's true for all of us. And then I wanted to add what Lani was talking about with these different civilizations is planet Earth was set up as a school for all the people who have lived on in the Orion civilization on many different planets and throughout our galaxy. We have a group karmic history of being the people who were never able to get along and were warring. And so it was set up that we would incarnate on planet Earth, like Lani talked about. We're attracted back here. And that's why we have so many different countries, so many different belief systems, because we have this rapport and have incarnated over and over again in these different civilizations and didn't get along. And I think on what recorded history so far, the amount of time that we have been at peace is, I don't know, it's less than 2 hours or something. We've always had warring on our planet, which is a sad state of affairs. However, what's happening is people all over our planet are waking up to that still small voice, the higher self, the inner self, the intuition that we have, that you're conscious. When I was a kid, my parents always told me, listen to your conscious. You can tell what's right or wrong. You don't have to have somebody else tell you. It's there within you. And they didn't use the word higher self, but they knew enough of the principles of energy that we all have that ability. So that's what's happening on our planet right now, is it's come to that fruition of all of these countries constantly can't get along. Why do they have so much history? Why do they hate each other? Well, it goes back to well beyond this lifetime or this current civilization. It goes back to many, many other planets that we've lived on and didn't get along. And now we're on the schoolroom of planet Earth to learn how to overcome that and eventually get along and change the bias of our planet to a positive one.
Yes, it saddens me, and I had this conversation with my wife the other day. It saddens me to think that collectively we haven't really evolved very much, and that a lot of things that before went unsaid and were perhaps hidden in people's minds are now being openly spoken of. And it's good in the sense that we can shine a flashlight or a light on them and address them and recognize them. But that doesn't seem to be what's happening collectively.
But here's the thing: if people learn the lessons, they go on. You don't see them again. They don't come back to the earth unless they want to come back to help mankind. And we have that same opportunity, instead of worrying about what everybody else is doing around us that we don't like, that seems negative, that seems backwards for us. And again, backwards and forwards, good and bad, it's all relative to where you are in the scale of evolution. But I mean, if we're just worrying about, our own progression, because that's the best way that we can help mankind, is if we can be a light, because we're doing, self-mastery. So, that's the thing to look at, is just, how can I best help not only myself, but as I help myself, I help others too. But again, once you do achieve self-mastery, then you don't have to come back here anymore. So we're not seeing the sadness comes from all of the people that decided not to take that opportunity to learn and to grow, and they're going backwards.
Very good point. Thank you. Tracy?
Um, I don't have anything to add to that. I guess maybe another question.
Okay. Now, Unarians are very fortunate in that they found this information and that they've followed that path and they've developed these perspectives and they're consciously evolving. A lot of people aren't, though. For people who are still very much stuck in the illusion, what would you direct them to do that won't spark off alarms that you're trying to convert them to a particular philosophy or spiritual path or so forth?
Well, that's a really good question, because a lot of students, and I was one of them, when I first started studying, I was so excited about the information that I was studying and learning. I wanted to tell all my friends, all my family. I wanted to unknowingly convert them to what I had discovered and how wonderful it was. And I quickly found out they weren't interested, they weren't ready. And I was regenerating my religious past of being a religious zealot and trying to convert people. So it doesn't work that way. And what we've come to discover is the best way that we can, I don't even want to say help people, but in a sense it is by being aware of your higher self and walking the talk and being an example. And I never talk about Unarius to anyone unless they are interested or ask. I might share a principle, I might share something with people I know and that are receptive, but I only will share something if there's an interest on their part, because otherwise I'm regenerating my past. But I've had many, many people, and my family in particular, ask, well, I know you're involved with Unarius and I don't understand it, but I can definitely see the change in you. And then eventually they do ask something about it. Now, have they picked up a book and started studying? My sister has. And other family members know that there's something different and that what I'm doing is helping me tremendously. And they enjoy being around me, my husband, because of that higher frequency that comes from us when we're in tune with our higher self, and they feel that. So we aren't, walking around with books saying, here, read this. No, that's, this is how you become a better person and how we're going to stop and change the world. It's by living your life, an honest, authentic life, taking personal responsibility, and being an example. And that's, I think, the best that we can do. And when people do ask and are ready, then we share, and we always point them to the books that this is a self-healing, self-taught science. We have classes, we have a tremendous amount of tools, but truly it's up to you to take responsibility to study and learn and ask questions when you have them. And the help is always there. We are not teachers, we are students, and all we can do is share examples of how we've learned and how it's helped us.
And I admire very many things about Unarius, and that's one of the things that I admire, that Unarius has this information. It keeps this information alive and accessible, not only through the books, but through the videos and the audios and through the movies. And there's all sorts of different ways to access Unarius, but it isn't, like you said, it isn't presented in such a way as to try to beat you over the head with it or convert you. And also, Unarians take a lot of responsibility, not only for their own lives, but for the world that they find themselves in. And they're very generous with sharing their experience, even very personal experiences that most people don't talk about. So those are a few things I really love about Unarius. So thank you for sharing again. Lani?
Well, what I would say is if they haven't had the preconditioning, it doesn't matter what you tell them. I mean, like tried to talk to my father, who was an aeronautical engineer, about, spaceships. And I said, this guy at McDonnell Douglas where he worked, right? He saw one in blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter what I said, it's just like whoops, I erased it on Tracey. It just, went over his head. And on the other hand, you can talk to someone who you've never met before. And like I've given the example where, I was in an expo in Mexico, and UNARIUS was on the far opposite corner, and someone came in the door and made a direct line right back to us, the totally the opposite end, and says, I've been looking for you guys forever, and what you say makes so much sense and all that stuff. So there's the two extremes, someone who's prepared and someone who they just haven't had the experience to relate to what you're saying. So it just doesn't it really wastes their time and your time too. But the thing that you can do is, again, as you're working on yourself, your self-mastery, you become more and more of a light, and people want to know, like Tracey said, like as a family, like, well, what are you doing? Or, how come everything goes so well for you? Or you have peace of mind. I want peace of mind, that kind of thing. So as your light is shining, that is resonating those higher frequencies within them. And then they will be more open, or if not to you, to their own higher self, because instead of regenerating the negative, which people tend to do a lot in this world, like, didn't you see that? That's awful. We have to go protest. I mean, he's a fascist, blah, blah, blah. You're just regenerating. You're contributing to the problem as you're reiterating all the negative stuff. Whereas if you take the opposite, and you are just working on your own self-mastery, then you're going to resonate those frequencies within that other person. Because, and seeing, I think another way of looking at it is seeing the infinite and the light coming through that person, their inner flame and stuff. So if because thoughts are energy, they're going out, they don't stay in your cranium. So if you're thinking those thoughts of, how can I see that higher, more positive energy within that person, then that activates it, that resonates those frequencies within that person. So that's how you're helping, quote unquote, and not by preaching.
That's a very good point. And as I shared before, I'm noticing that creating outrage is something that's being deliberately done by different perspectives. So there are entities and energies that feed on negativity.
Mhm.
And I've been noticing that pouring hate or negative feelings into what's going on and the people involved in spreading what's going on is just feeding them in some weird way. So I tell people, don't feed it. Watch it, study it, but don't feed it. Don't pour negative emotion into it, because they seem to thrive on it.
Yeah, and as you are emotional, that opens your back door up to obsession, lower astral entities, and so forth. And they join with you, and you have their power of negativity too expressing through you. And that's when, accidents happen, and fights break out and all of those stuff. And because you're not alone. The lower astral feeds on those.
Yeah, and that's a really valid, important concept to understand, and that's part of why we see so much rage and hatred in the world, is because people have opened up their back door, these obsessions, these astral entities, these people who have incarnated on planet Earth and are no longer in a physical body, but are still, their consciousness is alive, and they don't understand where they are and what they're doing. They don't understand that they have a higher self, and they're just feeding that negative energy, and then it regenerates within people's consciousness. So very, very valid point to be aware of is, who's influencing us? Do we want these lower astral forces that cause us to be hateful, to be resentful, to be angry, to be upset and feel good about it? Or are we open to our higher self and these angelic beings, this higher influence, this loving influence that makes us feel better and makes everybody feel better around us? So we all have choices all the time. And it's like, what dial, what channel do you want to tune into, the lower or the higher? And the more we can be aware that we have a better choice, a higher self, the more we open up that free flow of positive, wonderful information. And to give an example, and this has been, validated throughout history, when extreme examples of people who have been obsessed are somebody who will murder somebody because they've opened up their lower self to these astral entities, and they wake up from the murder act with a gun in their hand or a knife in their hand, and they don't remember how it happened. And it happened with one of the students of UNARIUS, who has since made his transition, but he actually had murdered his girlfriend, and woke up and didn't know how it happened and what he did. And he ended up serving time in prison, and then eventually became a student of UNARIUS, and understood, consciousness wise and energy wise, what had happened. So it's, very important concept that UNARIUS teaches the tools of how to understand what obsessions are, how they influence us, and how and what we can do about it. So, and there's vast amount of tools that we work with in understanding past life therapy, understanding our consciousness, understanding our negative emotions, how to stop them, how to become aware of them, and that's what helps us to navigate the craziness of the world and experience peace of mind. Because the sooner we learn how to catch those negative thoughts, the sooner we can say, oh, that's not my higher self, that's my lower self, and I don't want to be open to obsessions. And the more that we hold on to those negative thoughts, it spirals. And whenever, and anger is one of the most poisonous things, and chemicals actually flow throughout our consciousness and our body when we get extremely angry. And the longer we're in that state of consciousness, the harder it is to get out of it. So the sooner we can recognize those states of consciousness, those negative emotional reactions, the quicker we're attuning to our higher self and saying, that's not me, that's not how I want to feel, that's not what I want to do, or how I want to treat people, or whatever the situation is, the quicker we're more aligned with our higher self and being that conduit for love and light.
Are there UNARIUN techniques that can help somebody start letting go of their negativity or their judgmentalism, and start viewing things from a higher and more positive perspective?
It's throughout all the UNARIUS text.
So how would you recommend somebody listening who, again, hasn't walked on this path before, to try this, to see how their life would change?
Well, we have past life therapy videos, like classes, and that you can purchase and do in the comfort of your own home. This the 20th of this month, we have one at UNARIUS that people can they watch it on Zoom, Tracey, too, besides coming in person?
The transmission,
No, not the transmission, the PLT.
Yeah, the past life therapy workshop. I think it will be Zoomed. I'm pretty sure it will be.
But there's past sessions like the expo that you attended, Hercules, when UNARIUS has gone out to like Conscious Life Expo and Whole Life Expo and so on and so forth, and are given these past life therapy. You can just watch the YouTube videos, our podcast. That's something that we talk about at the end of the show, all the different ways that people can tune in. So, they don't have to come to the center. They can, and they don't even have to purchase a book, because we have so much that's online. They can just watch one of the YouTube videos, or our own podcast channel, or even yours, where we're talking. But yeah, there's so many avenues that, no one's gonna say this is what you have to do. You can just take a book. If you're interested, fine. If you're not, fine. Same thing when people walk into the center. We're not there to convert anybody. But we share our experiences so that they have an idea of when you're putting something into practice, how it works, when you're applying these principles, the fruits that can develop from it in resolving problems, and whether it's work or home, or spouses or family, or whatever your environment is. So the tools are there, and specifically in past life therapy, we use a journal. So that's really easy for people to keep a journal. And but the thing is, when you put all that stuff out on paper, then what? You're looking at it, a bunch of junk. So the point of reading the UNARIUS text, or you can, they're available as audiobooks or as videos, as mentioned, is because it helps you to make that attunement to your higher self, to the inner planes, and so that you're not in that reactionary state of mind. So then you're tuned, like the dial of television or the radio, you're tuned to a higher channel, so your mind is open and receptive to receive new information. Because if you had the answer already, a problem is just something you don't have the answer for. If you had the answer already, it wouldn't be a problem. So if you have your mind open to, receptive mode, you've turned your channel to, okay, I'm receiving now. I want an answer, and they're not going to do it for you, but they'll provide, the teachers will provide information, insights, pictures, whatever, however you get your information. to show you so that you have that aha moment. Ah, okay. Now I see, the connection or how I can apply it or what my next step is or, any of those things.
So there is one, there's a wealth of information, as Lonnie just talked about, and we've all been sharing, but in one particular chapter in The Infinite Concept of Cosmic Creation, which is uh, a series of lessons that the UNARIUS moderator, Ernest L. Norman, gave back in 1956. And one of the chapters is specifically on the tools of past life therapy. And there's one tool called the Chart of Self-Mastery, where you sit down in the quiet of your home and you write down all the negative emotions, reactions that you have, all the fears that you have. And then you keep a chart every day of how many times you had that angry reaction, whatever it is. And what happens is, as you start to keep track of it, you're supposed to do it for 3 months at a time, you start to catch those thoughts much faster because you immediately, or not immediately, but hopefully soon, start to think about, oh, there's that negative reaction I always have, that I'm jealous of this person, or I'm always angry at my boss. And you write it down. And at the end of the day, you write down how many times you had that reaction. And it's rather shocking and humiliating at first, because sometimes you begin to realize I'm not the nice, mamby-pamby, wonderful person I thought I was. If I'm really honest with myself, I have a lot of negative reactions. And it helps you to begin to attune to your higher self, because you're changing the channel, the bias of your thoughts, by recognizing, oh, there it is again. There's that, that jealousy, that criticism, the judgmental nature. But in taking it out of context, I wouldn't recommend just doing the Chart of Self-Mastery without studying everything else, because it's a comprehensive, ongoing course. Lani has been a student for many, many years. I have too. And I think any one of us who've been a student for a long time are the first to say, I'm just a beginner. There's so much more for me to learn.
Socrates was considered the wisest of the ancient Greek philosophers. His main realization was that he knew nothing.
Yep.
So he was kind
Or as is often said, the more I learn how little I know.
yes.
Yep.
And that's very humbling when you come to that place and you realize that, for all the information you've gathered and for all the knowledge you've soaked in, it's not very much. It's like a little candle flame in a vast night. I worked in the field of psychiatric rehabilitation for many years professionally. And in terms of the projections and things that people are noticing through the exercises of journaling and so forth that you shared, there are some other things that people could find useful. One was when they're soapboxing. That's when they're judgmentally judging someone or something, and they like start talking about it vociferously. To ask them or to ask themselves, who am I really talking to?
Hmm.
And often it's not the person you're soapboxing to. It's it's usually yourself or somebody very close to you that these insights that you're offering in a very vehement manner come out. And I found that to be a very useful technique. And also, if things happen to you over and over and over again, and you're saying things like all men or all women or all Greeks or all Americans or all whatever, when you put that all in there, you're cleverly casting different roles and playing out the same situation, and you're stuck in a loop. And that's something you're doing that. You're doing that on some level very deliberately and very meticulously. And that word all and the repetition of the story that you keep experiencing are good ways to start breaking yourself of those particular cycles as well.
Very valid point.
One of the first thing you mentioned of those two, the soapboxing, it comes to mind that the the reformed, whatever it is, smoker or drinker or whatever, is often the most,
Yes.
critical of everybody else. So it gives you an indication of what you did.
Yeah, and it's very powerful, and we don't realize it when we're doing that. And
Mhm.
as you guys shared again too, unless we start becoming self-conscious, we're not aware of how much of our negativity we're projecting out there
Yep.
that is being reflected back to us. It doesn't have to be anybody else. We're doing it to ourselves and to other people. And I found that if I just focus on making the world I'm in, regardless of what it is, a podcast or my home where I live or my neighborhood or my community, wherever my world happens to be at the time, if I try to make that world uh, a better place for everybody in it situationally, and it's nothing really complex or complicated or expensive, just be pleasant to people, to take the time to acknowledge them as living beings, to show concern and care. That's often enough to make a very profound difference in people's lives, because then they don't have anything negative that they're going to slow off somewhere else. And that negativity spreads very, very easily. And you're watching it happen based on how people's moods are. They'll like set each other off. It'll be like setting firecrackers on fire, and then this anger spreads all over the place. You can do the same thing with calm emotions as well, and pleasant emotions. And what I've also found very helpful in creating more positivity in my world is I imagine myself every night while I'm drifting off to sleep as growing bigger and bigger and bigger, and holding the world in the palms of my hands, and then sending the world positive energy, and then feeling like a wave of the peace that I feel inside myself pouring on the world. And I don't think that makes the world a calmer place. So we could tell that, but it does something inside of me that makes my world a calmer place.
Yeah, and you influence a lot of people in your own sphere, and they, carry that out to other people. So it's not even just the people that you contact, but you're the spreading good, it's like it's spreading a wildfire too. But there was one other thing I thought of too as you were talking. If you relax, and don't have to be a Unarian, but if you relax your conscious mind, because your conscious mind can create static, so you're not open to the inflow from your higher self. So, uh, if you're relaxed, you're more open to, that insights, information, intelligence from the higher self, from your higher self.
Thank you. That is a very powerful technique. Tracy,
Mm.
any techniques you could recommend for making the world a better place for people just starting on the positive path?
I think it goes back to what we started talking about at the beginning, which is recognizing that you have a higher self, and that we do influence people by our awareness of being a conduit for light and being open to that, and being aware that the lower self is not what we want to be in tune with, but we have a lower self, and that we all have this ability to be creative and to be loving, kind beings despite what's going on around us. And it kind of summarizes what we've been talking about in the last hour, is that we can make a change in the world by changing ourselves.
Yeah, I was just thinking, as you were saying that, of work, because I try in my work with music therapy to be aware of the Unarius Brotherhood. I mean, that's the most important thing, but also, the light within each person and the material that I'm doing, all of those things. But, the fruits is I'm not preaching, I'm not there to give them a, religious sermon. But when they leave and they're singing and they're smiling, and instead of just being like vegetables, it's easy to get into a lower state of mind in the facilities, because there's just so much pain and yelling and different things that people go through when they're sick. But that's how I know that I've been successful with making that contact and doing what I can, again, without it's indirect. It's just, if you're joyful, like you said, you're spreading calmness. If you're spreading joy, from whatever you've overcome that allows you to radiate that, then people feel it, and it's contagious, like laughing.
Yeah, and another aspect about being aware of your higher self is what we talked about earlier, with knowing that we have these advanced beings who are projecting and help, and we call them the space brothers, or the brothers of light and love, but that we all have this help, and we don't know in our conscious mind, we don't have all the answers, but just being open and receptive, that whatever question you have, problem you have, know that you can get help, and it may not come immediately, it may not come tomorrow, but you get help in sleep state, you get help when you're at peace. You get help when you're journaling. And it comes at random times, but just know that there are answers to all the problems that you're going through. And these beings want to help us. They want to see us progress and feel the love and light that they feel, and from the lessons that they've had to learn. And they're the first ones to say, we don't know what the end is. There's no nirvana per se, or pink cloud that we sit on. It's continual evolution, progressive evolution into different dimensions. And that the more we can just be aware of that we have this higher self, we have this help, and we can experience this love and light, and share that with others.
And one other thing, selflessness, as you, instead of worrying about your own problems and how bad you feel, try and help other people. I mean, be aware of other people. That's what the beings on the inner do. Their selflessness. They're always giving of self.
Thank you. That is very powerful, and that's an excellent place to start wrapping up today's conversation. How can people find UNARIUS and access the different information, levels of information, and types of information that UNARIUS so generously offers?
There's a multitude of ways. We are obviously on social media: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and we have videos on Vimeo. UNARIUS has a Vimeo channel, and probably the best place to go is UNARIUS's website to start. It's UNARIUS.org, and you can read about the books that we have. You can see the videos we have. There's links to different areas. There's a couple other websites about the Interplanetary Confederation, a website about past life therapy, a website about Nikola Tesla and free energy. And you can email us. We have ongoing classes on Wednesday and Sunday night that are Zoomed live, and anyone can participate in those. We recommend that you become somewhat familiar with UNARIUS before diving into a class. And then Lani mentioned earlier, next Sunday, July 20th, we have a day full of light enlightenment. We have a past life therapy workshop, which will be Zoomed. We have followed by a costume tour, and anybody's welcome to visit if you're nearby and can. And then in the evening, we have a mental transmission. So we have ongoing events throughout the year that people are welcome to participate in, whether they can come physically and visit us or on Zoom. A lot of our events are Zoomed live. We also have our headquarters is in El Cajon outside of San Diego, and anybody is welcome to visit at any time. And I'm trying to think of anything else. We have a wealth of resources.
Well, our own podcast. What was the name of it? Tracey?
Pardon me?
What's the name of it?
A Pathway to Enlightenment.
There you go. Yes.
And you can also, all of Hercules podcasts are actually archived on UNARIUS's website. So there's a lot of topics that I think it's been 7 years that we've been doing shows with Hercules. And so there's a lot of resources available for you. And you can always email us and ask questions. If you have a specific question about something you're going through, or how do I get an answer to this, or what, we don't like to tell people what to do, but if you give a specific question, we can kind of steer you in the right direction to get your answers.
And I can personally vouch that they do that, and they've done that in my life for over half a century. That's how long I've been interacting with the UNARIUS in various ways. Before the podcast, I was reviewing books, and we were having all sorts of other conversations. I think very highly of UNARIUS, and I consider myself, and I don't consider myself very much, I'm not a joiner, but I consider myself a proud student of UNARIUS. And UNARIUS has always been there to bring up certain resources that I can access when I was looking for them, but never tried to shove anything down my throat. And I greatly appreciate that, because I'm stubborn, so I don't like people shoving things down my throat.
Nobody does.
Thank you again for this excellent conversation. And it was great being able to see you as we talk. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation. Success with all your events. And thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thank you so much, Hercules. Always appreciate talking with you.
And say hi to all my UNARIUN brethren and sistren.
Good night.
Good night.